Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's that time again. It's that time again. It's time to bring you the one and only, the hardest working lady in the 757 in VA, 2 up and 2 down. I'm talking about all the way from Virginia Beach, that community activist, Miss Georgia Allen. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I tell you, I'm excited. I'm always excited to be able to come to our listening audience. Again, as Henderson said, I am Georgia F. Allen with GA for Justice every single Thursday from 12 noon until 1 o'clock, and sometimes a couple of minutes later. And as always, I want to say thank you. Thank you to Mr. Henderson Vaughn, aka Captain 85, aka the Dream Maker on WVDM, who has opened up the airwaves to bring our listening audience a conversation, a simple conversation for, excuse me, a simple conversation for information, a conversation for correction, as well as a conversation for transformation. Our disclaimer, of course, is many of you are aware that I have worked in the civil rights area and have been a community activist for decades. Therefore, the various positions that I may take are mine and mine alone. I do not speak on behalf of any groups, organizations, or associations. Today's topic, as always, vote. Every single week, we want to make sure that you know it is important to vote. But our personal topic is celebrating and commemorating our elders as well as our ancestors. Our Kwanzaa principle for today is umoja, or unity, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, the community, the nation, and the race. Our faith message comes from Hebrews 10:23. God is reliable, trustworthy, and faithful to his word. And so as we get started today, and we talk a little bit about our elders as well as our ancestors, it is Black History Month. And it's really important that we acknowledge that Black history is 24/7, 365 days a year, every single year, every single day, every single week, every single month. It is Black history. It is our history, and we will celebrate it. We will commemorate it regardless of what others may say. We will not back down. And so people will ask questions about how did the Black history start. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the founder of Black history. It was founded by Carter G. Woodson, and it was to continue, and we continue to continue his legacy until today. Carter G. Woodson was born December the 19th, 1875, and died on April the 3rd, 1950. And I want you to know that simply because we think that we're going to only talk about people that were born or died in the month of February. No, we talk about all the people because everybody brings different history to Black History Month, but we also talk about them throughout the year as well. Mr. Woodson was a professor. He was an American historian, an author, a journalist, and founder of the Association of the Study of African American Life and History. He was one of the first scholars to study the history of the African diaspora, including African American history. He was also founder of the Journal of Negro History in 1916. In February 1926, he launched the celebration of Negro History Week, which is the precursor of Black History Month. So why do we have Black history? Because we were being fed incorrect, inaccurate information with regards to who we are, what our identity is, what our culture is, we were being fed information that was inaccurate or straight up lies. And so Carter G. Woodson decided that he would study our history, but he would also share that history with the people during his time as a tool to educate us so that we didn't have to feel bad about what was being said about us. Because there were a lot of lies, and there still are, that are being said about us in negative ways, such as DEI. Changing DEI to mean that people aren't the best, that DEI simply helps people of a different group to get into positions that they do not qualify for. Well, as you read our history, you find that that is nowhere near being true. In February 1926, he launched the celebration of Negro History Week, which I read, the precursor of Black History Month. And Mr. Woodson was an important figure to the movement of Afrocentrism due to the perspective of placing people of African descent at the center of the study of history and the human experience. The human experience, not the human experiment. Because a lot of times we will look and we'll see that the other community thought that our bodies and our minds was something to be experimented with. Whereas Dr. Woodson wanted to make sure, and I do call him Dr. Woodson because he did earn a PhD. Dr. Woodson wanted people to understand the experiences that we had, the things that we went through, the knowledge that we had, the history that we had. And so he worked diligently to ensure that there was a real accurate study of our history and our human experience. Woodson was born in where? New Canton, Virginia. He is a Virginianite.
All right.
Born, he's the son of former slaves, Anna Eliza Riddle Woodson and James Henry Woodson. His mother had been taught how to read from her oppressor. And so she taught her children how to read. And so that is where he began his early schooling, was right in his home, because of course it was still illegal to try to teach our children and educate them. So as the son of former slaves, Mr. Woodson put off schooling temporarily to work in the coal mines of West Virginia. So he lived near West Virginia, and his brother was working in West Virginia, in Huntington, West Virginia. And so he went over and he worked there for a period of time. Then later he graduated, he studied and graduated from Berea College. He became a teacher and a school administrator. He earned degrees at University of Chicago. Then he became the second African American after W.E.B. Du Bois to obtain a PhD degree from Harvard University. After earning his PhD, he continued to teach in public schools. He served on the faculty of Howard University as a professor. And I do have a little more to read about him, but I want to pause for a moment because we sometimes take education for granted. And sometimes it's difficult to help our young people to understand how valuable education is and how valuable it can be. But we shouldn't use education alone simply to get degrees and go off to work in corporate America and go off to assimilate. If you look back at the W.E.B. Du Bois, the Carter G. Woodson, and many others, while they got their degrees, they went back and rebuilt their communities, whether it was from teaching and education, or in the case of George Washington Carver, as he learned more and more about agriculture, he also taught that to the community, thereby allowing us to know the earth, the nurturing of the earth, and we were able to grow our own vegetables and our own food products so that we were able to sustain ourselves even in the hard times. Each one of those people who came out, and of course, Carter G. Woodson is one of our ancestors now. So is W.E.B. Du Bois. And as I said, this is going to be about elders and ancestors today. They understood the value of continuing to educate our generations, but they also understood the value of community and unity and building something community-centered, so that whenever things happen, they were able to provide a foundation so that we didn't, as a community, we would not collapse. But once we moved into these societies of people where others were so involved in our inner workings of our lives, then we began to see more and more our community dissolving and disappearing and being engaged in areas that were not very beneficial to us. Now, Woodson went on to join different organizations. One of them was called the American Historical Association. And after being in it for a while, he had no interest. That organization had no interest in Black history. And even though he was a paying dues member, he was not allowed to attend their conferences. So he made a decision. He was like, there's no future in the white-dominated historical profession. So basically, I can't allow other people to teach me my history. And so therefore, he removed himself from that association, the American Historical Association, AHA. And what he did is he then went on to work as a Black historian, which would require creating an institutional structure that would make it possible for Black scholars to study their history. Now, this was still Carter G. Woodson. Carter G. Woodson continued, but he had relationships with people like W.E.B. Du Bois, which you see on our screen right now, because they understood the power of education. They understood how working together benefits us as a whole and not one or two individuals. Now, Woodson lacked the funds to finance such a new institutional structure by himself, so he turned to the philanthropist institutions such as Carnegie Foundation, the Julius Rosenwald Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation. Because if people have held you down, and this is what people have to understand, if folks have held you down, then they have a responsibility to help fund the things that will pull you up. Otherwise, you may stay in that same situation indefinitely. And for people who are out there and like, well, I don't want to take anything from this person. And you know what? You are right to be willing to look and investigate before you take money from certain people, because all money is not good money. But you don't just say no to money without doing your own due diligence to determine whether or not it is in the long-term best interest, not just a temporary best interest, but long-term best interest to accept money from certain groups or certain organizations. And so ultimately, he knew that he was not going to be able to self-fund. And since that was the case, what he did is he said, okay, well, I'm going to go to these people. They have money, but they also were many of the people that their forefathers probably were responsible for the conditions of the Black community. So if you are responsible for something, then you must be held accountable. Now, how we go about holding people accountable depends upon who is at the helm or who is, making the decisions regarding this situation. So again, Carter G. Woodson, W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, and others are our ancestors. And we want to make sure that we pay homage to our ancestors and remember all the things that they have done on our behalf to place us in the position that we're in today. So again, the thing that I love about Woodson, when you read about him and things that he did and the things that he was not willing to do, is he always kept the community first. It was never about him as a individual or him personally. He always looked at, as I said, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, the community, the nation, and the race. And he understood the power of the unity in unifying our community, our race, our family. He understood the value of that. So Umoja, of course, is our principle for today. Now I'm going to pause for a moment, make a few announcements and acknowledgments, and then I'm going to continue on talking about more of our history, our elders, our legacy, our ancestors. Okay. In the month of February, we have a number of birthdays, but we have amazing people who are still living. So I'm going to start with Leontine Price, opera singer, a soprano opera singer. She was born February the 10th, 1927. She is 98 years old, still alive, still an elder. Over the years, she has won 15 Grammy Awards for vocal recordings, and she has been on the cover of Time magazine and 27 other magazines. Leontine Price was married to William Warfield, also an opera singer. He was baritone, and the two of them were together for a number of years, and both did extremely well in the opera scene. We also have Leslie Uggams. Leslie Uggams. She is 81 years old. Her birthday, of course, is May 25, 1943. You may know her as Kizzy Reynolds in Roots, where she earned Grammy Award nominations in 1977. She earned Emmy Awards nominations for her performance as Kizzy in Roots. She also garnered acclaim on Broadway with the musical Hallelujah, Baby. She won a Theater World Award in 1967 and a Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical in 1968. You may remember just recently from 2016 to 2020, she played on Empire. And for those who watch Empire, still active, okay, in her 70s. And then in 2023, just 2 years ago, when she was 79 years old, because she's 81 now, she played in American Fiction. And that came on. I watched it. I think it was on Amazon. It's a great show that they had put on that did a spoof on how people look at Black people, and they want them to do the jigaboo, or they want them to do certain things. And American Fiction, he more or less did a spoof on that, and she was one of the actresses in that. So we have a lot of absolutely wonderful actors and actresses. Um, the director of that movie was Cord Jefferson, and the story was written by a gentleman named Percival Everett, and Percival Everett wrote it, and then it went on to become a film. And again, Leslie Uggams was in it. Jeffrey Wright was in it. Sterling K. Brown, Issa Rae, and a number of wonderful actors and actresses was in that movie. And the name of it is really apropos, American Fiction, where they're saying that you guys have been living a world of fiction, trying to box Black people in this scene of this is the only way that Black people are. And it was really good. I watched it. It was a little bit deep at times when they were going through some of the different things with regards to how people see you or how they don't see you from time to time. And most of us have been in that situation at one time or another, where you're sitting in the room and can be the only Black person in the room. And if that room is all white people, even though you are only only black person in the room, they will sit right there and insist that they don't see you. Will insist they don't see you. They don't see you. So it was a very good movie. Keith David was in there, one of my favorite actors. But all the time we have to recognize that we have phenomenal people who are in our community, phenomenal people who have done tremendous things, and they are sometimes dismissed or unseen. You will hear that from our people, like our tennis stars. Expect one thing of a tennis star because they're Black, and something different. Same thing with our athletes, other athletes, such as our football players and basketball players, and also even in other leadership positions. When you're in Congress or you're head of a corporation, how you're treated is different. And so American Fiction kind of peeled back the onion on how people of our race can be treated or mistreated or looked at. Now, there are other couple of people, and again, these will not all be people born in February, but I do want to acknowledge them for Black History Month. And that is Bessie Coleman. Bessie Coleman was the first African-American woman to fly a plane, period, but she also was a stunt flyer. And she did flight performances. She earned her license June 15th, 1921. And she had nicknames such as Brave Betsy and Queen Bess. Bessie Coleman, one of our ancestors. Malcolm X, born May 9, 1925, but he was assassinated in February the 21st, 1965, which will be coming up next Friday. Because Valentine is tomorrow. For all of those who are like, put up some Valentines. Yes, Valentine is tomorrow. And it's also Carl Wright birthday. He'll probably shoot me. Said, no, you did not tell everybody on live.
Yeah, Valentine man.
That I'm a Valentine baby. Yes, Carl is a Valentine baby. But next week, Malcolm would have turned 100 years old on next Friday, the 21st. So we want to remember our ancestors as well as our elders. I have two more elders that I want to mention. Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson is now 83 years old. He was civil rights activist, Baptist minister, and a young protege of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He began his activism in 1960s, and he formed Rainbow Push in Chicago, Illinois. And he did that to create a way to push back against corporations and businesses who were not being inclusive. And so, again, it was a little bit easier to do that back in the days when we weren't employed as much as we are in these corporations today. So our family, our friends are intertwined in these corporations. And therefore, when we do these pushbacks, I'll call them pushbacks, people call them boycotts, non-purchase day, fasting day, whatever, they can impact our community in a way that having boycotts and stop purchasing days did not have in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. So again, we have our elders and we have our ancestors. And the last elder that I want to mention is Andrew Young. Andrew Young was an American politician, and he is 92 years old now. So we need to appreciate our elders. We have an elder that is, the youngest one is 81, which is Leslie Uggams. Then Jesse Jackson is 83. Andrew Young is 92. And Leontine Price is 98 years old. So we still have quite a number of elders with us that we should not forget them. We should appreciate them, and we need to acknowledge. So again, this is my time for announcements, acknowledgments, and commemoration. Andrew Young was also the mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, and he was also a congressman from the state of Georgia. He was active in the civil rights movement during the period of Dr. Martin Luther King, and he continues to be active today. If you look, you will see him still giving interviews. I believe he was at President Carter's funeral, and so don't look at these people as if they have gone away just because they're older. No, they're still active and they're still pushing and they're still fighting on our behalf and on behalf of others. And we need to appreciate that. We need to acknowledge that. And again, our elders, Leontine Price, Leslie Uggams, Jesse Jackson, and Andrew Young. Okay. We do have an upcoming event on Monday. What is that? Monday is the 17th, I believe. Mm-hmm. There will be a protest at the office of Congresswoman Kiggins. So if you live in Virginia Beach, because I do know that this does go in other areas, but at Congressman Kiggins' office, there will be a protest because of all the things that are going on in Congress right now that are damaging and are not necessarily beneficial, not only to our community, but to the country as well. And so we want to make sure that people are aware. It is going to be at 1:00, and her office is located in the town center area of Virginia Beach. Now, she also has a campaign office that's located down the street in Collins Square. But what I'm seeing, it says in front of Kiggins' office. So I take that to mean that that will be at her congressional office, and that will be Monday the 17th at 1 p.m. So we do want to encourage people who live in Hampton Roads, who live in Virginia Beach. If Jen Kiggins is your congressperson, we do want to encourage you to go down there. And if you're concerned about what's happening with Social Security, if you're concerned about people going into the treasurer's office and gaining access to files, and these people do not have clearances, they are not legitimate employees of the government, they are simply appointed. They're not taken, from what we hear, they're not taking salaries, so they're free for all. And this is one of those situations where you try to determine, how do you hold these people accountable when someone has decided that they are a dictator and they can just make decisions by themselves without following any guidelines, any procedures, any laws of any kind. And so that's where we find ourselves in at this moment in time. So we also need to push back when these type of things are happening. We need to make sure that we too are pushing back. We can't just let people do whatever they want to do. Remember, there are over 300 million people in the United States of America, and that's in the United States. That's not talking about all the islands and other things that are United States territories. We're talking about the United States. There are over 300 million people. And therefore, if we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, then the people should have a voice. The people should have a voice, and the people should make sure that they're calling their Congress people, whatever political party they are affiliated with, and let them know that you are concerned about what is happening with the Department of Education, or what is happening with the Department of Defense. Why are there so many people losing their jobs? And those are the questions that you can ask of your congressperson. Do not feel like you're not able to ask these questions. So with that being said, we're going to talk about another, and it's not an individual, it's actually an organization. It's an organization that I have been a part of for over 35 years now, I do believe. I think it's good. It might be a couple of years more than that. And that is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The NAACP was founded February 12th, 1909. We are now 116 years old as of yesterday. 116 years old. We are the oldest civil rights organization in the nation and around the world. We have this thing, we say we are the largest and the oldest, the baddest and the boldest, the most loved and most hated, the most feared and revered civil rights organization in the nation. And we still are. We still are. And this organization was founded by a diverse group of men and women to fight against racial terrorism around the nation. And when I say racial terrorism, it was actually racial terrorism. There was an incident that there was a number of incidents, but one that was very troubling, even to persons who were not Black, was the one in Springfield, Illinois. And that is when they went in and they burned out and they pushed out and set people on fire. They set the buildings and homes and stores on fire. So the riots actually that they later operate as if riots are started by Black people. Those riots started years and years ago. Even before they attacked Black people, white people rioted against their own. They would go into towns and places. If they thought that they heard somebody had shot somebody, they didn't bother to wait until the judge came and they got the information. They just went in and rioted the town and burned out. And then after they found out that, oh, we got the wrong person, went right back home. Thought about it for a minute and said, I made a mistake, and moved right on. Didn't hold on to it a hot 5 minutes. But because of what took place in Springfield, Illinois, newspapers were writing stories and articles about what was taking place in this country that wanted to tell people, other countries, how to live, and other countries what they should do and what they shouldn't do, while they were here in their own country creating and wreaking havoc on the people who lived here. The main focus was on lynching, because this country was a country that loved to lynch people, you know. And so there were a number of cities. There was Elaine, Arkansas, where there was race riots. And just to remind you, those were not riots that we started. Those was riots that were started by white Americans. Wilmington, North Carolina, Rosewood, Florida, and of course, Tulsa, Oklahoma, which we hear a lot about these days. But a town like Wilmington, North Carolina, they were already electing Black people to office. But the white people were like, oh, they own businesses, they have this. And they were not happy. Mm-hmm. The same people that yell and scream about pull yourself up by the bootstraps, when people do that and they outshine, outperform, own more, they get upset about that. So it's like you're living in a nation where there is nothing that one group of people can do to please this group of people who have decided that they're going to be all powerful. Other people, they ultimately assimilate, okay? But they can't really do that with Black people because of our skin tone. Other people can keep mirroring, and eventually you won't see that skin tone anymore. With our skin tone, you will almost always know that we are of the melanated group of people. And so NAACP began February 12th, 1909. I know many people think they were born out of a church. No, it was an apartment building in New York City. It was an apartment building in New York City. And again, it started behind the fact that the white population was constantly setting fires and destroying Black communities again and again and again. And so after a while, there were people like Mary White Overton, who wrote letters, and she sent a letter, a call to action, and said, this cannot be. You know, this is basically embarrassing, is basically what it boiled down to. And those newspapers, even though it was back in the early 1900s, news did travel across the water to the other side of the world. And so the same people who were constantly speaking poorly of these nations in other countries and on another continent, their behavior was so horrific until there was backlash from people from other nations saying, oh, so you are a democratic society, but you have a whole nation of people who don't enjoy the benefits of their citizenship. And so W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, Mary White Overton, Henry Moskowitz, William English Walling, Mary Church Terrell, and others came together to form the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And our message and our vision of ending attacks on marginalized and Black people and other people of color is still a vision, and it's still a mission for us today. That has not changed. And these were activists. These were legal experts. These were suffragists. And they saw that this was not right. They saw that the continuance of lynching was not right. They also, as time went on, in the 20s and the 30s, 1920s and the 1930s, they began to fight against discrimination in employment, in voting rights, in segregated public facilities. Now, why is that so important? Because we were paying into a tax system that wouldn't allow us to use the facilities that was purchased by our tax dollars. So the NAACP saw the importance of having a voice out there to fight against such injustice. We won many legal battles, from Brown v. Board of Education to the fair housing rights, to equal opportunity rights, and causing our presidents to form the FHA, to form the EEOC. And it also worked as beneficial for persons who were disabled. And so you're now able to see a lot of the hard work of the NAACP when you walk in a building and you see a ramp so that people with disabilities are able to go in and out of the building much easier than they once were. You see that with how people with disability are able to work at some of these restaurants and some of these grocery stores because of the fight for equity with the NAACP. We continue to advocate today for equality, for political rights, for social inclusion for everybody. And we have over 2,200 branches around the country and millions of people around the world. So you can be an NAACP member even if you don't live in the United States of America. You can form a branch in other countries that support justice. So with that being said, and we're getting close to the end of the show, if you're not a member of the NAACP, I do want to encourage you today, on behalf of our elders and on behalf of our ancestors, join your local chapter of the NAACP. And you want to join and find a place that you have a passion about. I have a young lady, we have a young lady, I don't know why I said I. We have a young lady in the Virginia Beach branch in NAACP who is passionate about education. And she is looking at everything that the school board is doing and making sure that we are aware of those things. And we look at how do we address those things? How do we make it better? What are the things that we can do? So no one person can do everything, but us collectively can help strengthen our school system and make sure that our children have equal opportunities to be in the academy program, equal opportunity to be a part of the Old Donation School for the gifted and talented. And I don't know anybody more gifted and talented than Black people.
That's what they
Look
needed.
at Super Bowl halftime and tell me about the gifts and the talents that Kendrick Lamar had. Don't know anybody more gifted and more talented. You can look, throughout history and see the gifts and the talents in our community. And so we want to value our elders. We want to remember our ancestors. And we want to make sure that we talk about it so that we don't let others forget. And when they say, why Black history? Because you lied. If you had told accurate history, there would not have to be a Black history. We have to have Black history because you lied so much and you gave us so much disinformation and misinformation, as well as miseducation, that it caused someone like a professor, a doctor, Carter G. Woodson, to say, you know what? We're better than this. We're better than what they're telling you in the classroom. You got something to share, Henderson?
Well, of course, with what we go through and in our future generation with the new leadership in the presidency, they'll continue to try to erase. After 400 years, we right back. They try to bring us back to square one. Like you ain't done nothing. That's why it's important to get our young people engaged and talk to them and educate them. And again, with the Super Bowl, that's the biggest stage there was. That's why they're so upset with Kendrick Lamar, because when he came on stage, Donald Trump left. He didn't stay. So we have all these things that
Right.
they thought he was talking about the rapper, but he really wasn't talking about the rapper. He was really talking about the way they try to minimize our talents and our gifts.
Absolutely. Yes. And so we want to make sure that we tell our own story, because if we don't tell our story,
Won't get told.
somebody's going to tell it for us and it won't be our story. So it's up to us to tell our story and to tell it accurately. And that's the issue. Stories are being told, but they're not being told accurately.
Yep.
They just make up stuff. And
That's
so
what
with that being said, we are coming to the close of this show. How about that? How did that happen?
and always happen when you're having fun.
So anyway, with that being said, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I hope this information that we shared today, because I know we've been busy involved with elections and voting, and yes, we're still pushing elections and voting. And for those of you who are in Virginia Beach and are listening, call your local council member, call your local delegate, and your local call your state delegate and your state senator, and remind them of how important it is for them to vote in favor of codifying our charter for the 10-1 election system. Because even though we fought and won the lawsuit, our antagonists don't stop. Our opposition does not stop. Our enemies, they do not stop. They will fight to the death if they have to. And we're going to have a similar mindset. And you don't have to die if you fight as a collective. You don't have to die if you fight as a unit. You don't have to die if we had 5 churches that filled the chambers of city council. And your churches are diverse. Your churches are not all Black people anymore. They are diverse churches. And if the white churches believe what they claim to believe, then they too would have their congregations sitting in the chambers of our city council and saying, it's time to change. It is time to change. And the 10-1 system is best for all of us. So, with that being said, it is that time. Thank you all so much for listening today. I hope this has been beneficial. And go back and pull up Leontine Price, and go back and pull up Leslie Uggams and Jesse Jackson and Andrew Young, and pull up some of the names that I call. And then also go and look at some of the other names that sometimes we tend not to mention quite as often, and remind ourselves of what these people did on our behalf, those who are living and those who are now our ancestors. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week, same time, same station, WVDM. This is Georgia Allen with GA for Justice. And again, commemorating, celebrating our elders and our ancestors. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Once again, an excellent show, Miss Allen. You always put the cream on the top with a cherry. And I want to ask everybody that's watching, and if you get a chance to watch later, don't forget to share it with people on your social platforms, because it's about the importance of getting information and the right and correct information to our community. On behalf of Von Digital Media, GA for Justice, and your host, the one and only community activist, Miss Georgia Allen. Until next Thursday from 12 until 1, once again, we'll be back. We will be back, and we will continue to bring you information for transformation. Until next time, so long.
So long.